Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today as we look into another terrible tragedy that really needs your help. You know, frequently on the channel here, I talk about sometimes the frustrations that I feel with law enforcement keeping too much information held back. There's times where they're asking for help and they're literally not giving us the pieces to be able to help them. Today's case is actually a pretty good example of doing that right. We're 6 months down the line and a bunch of new information has come out that could be very helpful. We need to spread the word. We need to get video and these facts in front of people that might have the information that can bring this case to a close and help bring justice to two separate families for 3 victims. As I mentioned, we're about 6 months away from this terrible occurrence, but if what law enforcement is telling us is right, it was 6 minutes. That's all it took for this to happen. 3 lives lost and a fire set to try to cover that up. And where did this occur? Probably one of the last places that you would expect, as we can see from this beautiful photo here and this title, 2023's hottest zip codes. Spoiler alert, number 1 is Cypress, Texas. And that's according to information that came from Open Door. Let's learn more about Cypress with a quick stop at Wikipedia. Cypress is an unincorporated community in Harris County, Texas, United States. It's 24 miles northwest of downtown Houston. The Cypress urban cluster ranks 50th in the top 100 highest income urban areas in the United States. Large-scale residential and commercial development began in the 1980s, transforming the once rural area into one of Houston's largest suburban communities. If it were to be incorporated as a city, it would be the 2nd largest in Greater Houston, the 18th in Texas, and the 125th largest in the United States. Population as of 2020, over 200,000 people. An affluent community, a beautiful community, and I'm sure they do not see occurrences like this regularly. Starting at ABC News, deadly house fire near Houston. This is definitely a homicide, according to a sheriff's detective. This occurred August 18th, 2024. That would be a Sunday. The fire at the 2-story brick home in Cypress, Texas, northwest of Houston, was reported Sunday morning, and while extinguishing the blaze, firefighters made the grim discovery of 3 bodies inside. And investigators found evidence of foul play, according to Sergeant Michael Ritchie of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Apparently, one of the bodies was found downstairs. 2 were found upstairs. The remains found inside the house were that of a mother, her adult son, and his girlfriend. The victims were identified by the sheriff's office as 54-year-old Kelly Masciarelli, her 23-year-old son, Kolin Foster, and his girlfriend, Cameryn Richard. Cameryn, only 21 years old. These individuals look like they were deceased before the fire was started, so this is definitely a homicide, not accidental death due to fire and smoke, Ritchie said. The fire broke out around 7 a.m. at the home, which sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, prompting neighbors to call 911. Ritchie said trauma on the bodies, noticed by firefighters and paramedics, led investigators to launch a homicide investigation. He said that investigators are waiting for autopsies to determine the exact cause of death. Homicide investigators obtained a search warrant. The home also needed to be inspected to ensure the fire was completely out and it was safe to go inside. I mean, I can't imagine this. We've already got the scene being treated for the fire. So in terms of evidence, what happens with that? I'm sure they're going in there with hoses. I'm sure they're trying to knock down this fire. First, we have the fire that is damaging potential evidence, but then we have the act of trying to save this home and save the neighbors' homes, and that affects this crime scene as well. And then we've got this, I'm sure it wasn't an incredible delay, and I'm sure they had the area roped off and guarded, but this time gap of let's make sure that this is safe. Let's make sure that our homicide investigators are going to be safe as they go in there and start looking for what they need to find. Arson investigators advised the sheriff's office that the blaze looked to have been deliberately started by an accelerant, officials said. So for not having a lot of information, we have some very strong details right off the bat. They're fairly clear. This is a murder based on what has happened to the bodies, though they're holding back that information as of this article. And obviously this is arson. Investigators are pursuing several leads. We're reviewing some video that we've been able to recover, Ritchie said. We're looking for some possible suspects. So let's take a quick look at the victims here. This is Kelly Masciarelli, 54-year-old mother. And I have a little video clip of her from Facebook to share with you here. From what I could see from her profile, this is someone that cared about her health, cared about being young and vibrant, and as you're going to see in this clip, also about the effects of positivity and what that can bring to your life.
Let's get this day rolling. Let's start with our affirmations. We affirm to be positive. We affirm to be diligent. We affirm to be the very best that we can be.
This is Kelly's 23-year-old son, Kolin Foster. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a lot of social information on Kolin, no online profiles. The only obituary I found was very obviously created by AI, so I can't really trust it too strongly. What I can trust is I did look through his mother's Facebook page, and she does mention having at least one other child. So I believe he also has siblings that are being affected by this. But I completely understand why the family is being a little tight-lipped around this. We don't really have a motive in this case yet. Even with the information that came out recently, there is no clear motive. And I'm certain because of how this was carried out that family members are fearful for their own safety as well. So it's been a little tough trying to figure out a bit about their lives. And this is his 21-year-old girlfriend. I believe her name is actually Cameryn Richard. That first article has it with an S on it, but if we check her Facebook page, Cameryn Richard here. And it does talk about her working at NESC Staffing, which is a temporary agency, but she works there placing people. I think that might have been a part-time job because it also notes that she works at a restaurant called the Butler House. They made a post about this as well. It's with great sorrow that we announce the passing of our beloved colleague, Cameryn Richard. At just 21 years old, Cameryn was a remarkable young woman with a vibrant spirit and a beautiful soul. As a talented and rising cosmetologist, she brought creativity and enthusiasm to everything she did. I did run into a few mentions of her going to cosmetology school, so I don't know if she was still actively enrolled, if that was a passion that she was still trying to reach, but as of what her Facebook says, these were her current places of employment. Her kindness and positivity touched everyone she met, leaving an indelible mark on our hearts. We encourage everyone to keep Cameryn and her family in your thoughts and prayers during this incredibly difficult time. Our deepest condolences go out to her family and loved ones. So where did this happen? This is the neighborhood, and we can see one of the things I wanted to highlight about this, the article mentioned that this was in a cul-de-sac. And when you're talking about an occurrence like this, that would mean that you've got a lot of potential people that could be seeing what's going on here. And we know this is a Sunday morning. We've probably got a lot of people that are home around that time, possibly people that are going out for walks or getting their morning started. But also you can just see the makeup of this neighborhood. And keeping in mind, this is an affluent area, there's probably cameras all over this. And as a matter of fact, we're going to get to some information that supports that. There certainly are a lot of cameras to work with here. But this is the cul-de-sac where it happened. Let's just go ahead and jump down to Street View real quick. And that would be the house straight ahead there. Here at khou.com, it notes that all three lived in the home, and it's unclear if anyone else lived with them. I did run into some other information with other names that have been attached to that house, but sometimes when I find that on certain websites, it's not very solid. It's basically information that's either another person that lived there at a different time, or if you have situations like, Kelly might have had a long-term boyfriend, maybe he lived there for a while. So I can't really lean into that too much. But of course, at this point in the investigation, that would be a very important fact. If there are other people that live there, who are they? Where were they? What's going on with those stories as well? I believe at this point that there is no one else living there. There certainly hasn't been anyone that's been identified as being another occupant of that house. So it seems like it's just the three of them. Candy Reddick is one of the neighbors who came outside when everything started. She said someone driving by saw the smoke and tried to knock on the door. When no one answered, they called 911. Reddick said that she saw when the woman was pulled from the home. Medics tried to work on her, but it was too late. Apparently, Kelly was the first one found, and they brought her out to the front yard to try to save her life. I don't know if that means she was the one downstairs. I would kind of infer that maybe that was the case, but I don't know that to be fact. Quote, hard and scary, and to see that there was no life in her was terrifying. I just still see her on the ground, Reddick said. Reddick said that she's keeping the family in her thoughts and hope they find whoever did this. They didn't deserve this. I can certainly agree with that. Nobody deserves what happened in this house. And then we get this, and there's mention here of another vehicle. And now, knowing what was released just last month, I don't know how important this is, but it hasn't been kind of officially discounted by law enforcement, so I am going to touch on this. It might still be a little piece of this puzzle in some way. A red Corvette was towed away from the home, and it's now an area of interest for detectives. It was found in the driveway of the home. And detectives said that the son recently bought the Corvette. The previous owner is in the clear, but investigators believe the last person in the car wasn't the son. A neighbor told a reporter that she heard a car door slam. Now, I was hoping there might be more information about the timing on that, but I'm not really finding anything there. Sergeant Ritchie believes the suspect ran out of the back of the home. KPRC2 saw a crime scene investigator placing evidence markers near a fence at a nearby park behind the home. So that might mean that they actually didn't enter through the front of the house, and all that hope I had about witnesses and cameras might not play out, at least in that way. Sergeant Ritchie says that setting a fire after a homicide is a common tactic killers use to cover their tracks. Quote, it's difficult to say this early in the investigation, but I do believe there's still enough evidence. As you can see, the house behind me, it's still intact. It wasn't completely burned down. Not everything inside was destroyed, so we've been able to recover some evidence, Ritchie said. Detectives are hoping the evidence in the red Corvette can lead them to the driver. Investigators say it's unclear if there is one suspect or multiple suspects. So this is a picture of them hauling away the red Corvette. You can see it's a bit of an older model. I would think that's like a 1990s model. And apparently Kolin was into older cars of that age, sports cars in particular. Continuing at Click 2 Houston, a friend would step forward to make comments on this case. The best friend of Cameryn Richard. Her name is Mackenzie Abbott, and she's been friends with Cameryn since middle school. As a matter of fact, we can see some tattoos that several of the friends have here depicting their friendship. Cameryn loved butterflies. She was just so free and girly. Abbott just returned to college in Virginia when she had learned that Richard was murdered. She said that she had just spoke with Richard the day before. They talked about their favorite TV show and shared funny social media posts. Abbott says Richard had been living with Foster at the home for a while and things were going well. She never thought Richard was in danger. Cameryn had dreams of becoming a professional hairstylist. Quote, little body, big heart. That was her for sure. She was just a goofball. She was just the most forgiving person I've ever met. She was a good person, said Abbott. Abbott is hoping that whoever killed Richard, Foster, and Masciarelli will be held accountable. And that brings us to the time jump. So basically, those were all the articles from literally the week that it happened. And then there was this giant gap. There's no new information. Nothing else comes out until law enforcement says, we're going to do a press conference and we're going to share some details here. So the first thing I wanted to note from this press conference is they finally give us the medical examiner's information. This is certainly murder, but how exactly were they killed?
During the investigation, the medical examiner's office conducted autopsies on the victims and was able to determine that all three victims were shot multiple times and were deceased prior to the fire starting.
So we now know how they came to the determination of homicide so quickly. It's likely that when they removed Kelly from the house that they saw a bullet wound, at least one, pretty much immediately and knew that something else was going on here. Now, several other things were shared in this press conference, and quite honestly, I haven't seen these noted in any of the other articles, so I want to make sure to share them with you. One of the other big points is they do believe that the suspect came in through the back, specifically the back door. But something else they noted is there's no forced entry observed. So if they did come in through that back door, either it was unlocked or possibly the person had some method of accessing it. If that's a key or if there was a keypad, the person might have known the code, something along those lines, but no forced entry observed. Inside the house, a piece of evidence that I'm hoping might help with this case significantly, shell casings. They did find shell casings for the shootings that happened. As a matter of fact, the reporter asked, did you guys find the weapon? And she clarifies, we did find a weapon, but we don't believe it's the weapon that was used. They found another weapon that belonged to Kolin. They reiterated that there is no known motive, and reporters kind of tried to ask this a few different ways. Sheriff Gonzalez at one point retakes the mic and even says, hey, look, we don't know the motive and probably won't until we find the person that did this, and then we'll get to understand what the reason is for it. And one reporter asked him specifically, what's it going to take to solve this case? And he put it in 2 words, a tip. So that tells me that 6 months down the road, they might not have the forensics to actually bring this to a close. I'm hoping I'm wrong with that. I hope that maybe just, there's backlogs at the labs. Maybe it's taking longer to get those tests. But it's, to me, to have a case have so much exposure, be this type of case that grabs so much attention that first week, go completely radio silent, and then 6 months later, there's kind of this big push with a press conference. The FBI is also part of this now. They join in on this press conference. There's a reward that's also part of this. This is very obviously an engineered push. Solid information being released, a new reason for someone to speak up in terms of a reward, and also, I think, a show of unity and force to the suspects. Probably. Seems like there's probably 2 people involved here, and we'll get to why pretty soon. One thing that strikes me about the thought of the motive is that whole thing about the 6 minutes. And I know I haven't explained how we know that yet. We're about to get to that. But knowing that the person was in the house for only 6 minutes, this obviously isn't, it's not a random crime. This isn't someone that was going into the house to burglarize it. Could robbery be a component here? If it is, it was something extremely specific, probably one item. Maybe they forced someone to tell them where it was, took it, and left. And that's a big if in my mind. It seems like the murder was the reason for being here. So that's why the social information, I think, is going to be really important. But unfortunately, there's just not a lot of details to help on this front. All we have are a mother, her son that lives with her, and his girlfriend that lives with him. There's really not a whole lot more in terms of social information that we know about this. Of course, if you are the person that has what they're looking for, and he said it very bluntly in 2 words, they're looking for a tip to solve this case. We need you to call the FBI. You can do that by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI, or you can visit them online at tips.FBI.gov. Something else that they shared at that press conference, surveillance video. So it's been 6 months. The motive for the murders remains a mystery. Suspect still on the loose, but there's video of the suspect and possibly the person that's helping the suspect. As a matter of fact, they've also put together a timeline here. I'm going to mix this with some other information I've pulled together, a map that I've built, try to give you guys as complete a view as we can of this. So timeline, Sunday, August 18th, 2024, starting at 5:30 a.m., the getaway driver drove through the neighborhood for approximately 30 minutes. So, and the suspect is in the car with him during this time, I believe. Over here at Fox 26 Houston, we have clips of that car just driving around. So let's go ahead and watch this together. We can see it's a dark sedan, and they're being very clear. In some instances, they're saying it's black. In others, they're saying it could be dark blue, but it is a dark sedan. We see it kind of hitting the street here, but it does a quick U-turn and comes back and passes again. We can see this is obviously a security camera from one of those homes in the neighborhood. Another security camera from a different home here. Pretty decent shot of that. And I'd be very surprised if law enforcement hasn't used an analyst to figure out what this vehicle is already. If they do know it, they're not they're not sharing that information publicly. But I have seen some comments from law enforcement that says they think they know not who this car is, but they think they know the car. We can see the clocks on some of this footage, that one from 5:41 a.m. And same camera, 6 minutes later, coming back the other way, 5:47, driving down another street. I don't know what the purpose is. Same camera, 2 minutes later, driving back around again. I don't understand what the purpose of this driving is, unless they're trying to look to make sure that there's no law enforcement that's in the area, potentially. Now, when I saw this clip, I thought, oh, they're back at the truck. This is actually the same footage. It's not, because we can see when they make that turn, now they're going straight this time. They're not turning around. So they're circling the area. I would have to think it's trying to make sure that they're not going to run into any trouble. 5:47. And then a minute later, coming back the other way. Now this one, the time code says it's 6:19, and I'm not sure if this time code is accurate. If it is, then this would actually be after the occurrence. This one also says 6:19, but it looks like it's part of the same security system. But like I said, I mean, it could be that the time is inaccurate on that, although 5:19, typically it would be off by an hour because maybe it wasn't switched for daylight savings or something. And this one's back to 5:47, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure why the time code is so different in that second one. You're probably looking at this thinking, hey, that's the cul-de-sac. I believe this is a different cul-de-sac that is kind of shaped the same. This one really gets me because they're driving right by a state trooper vehicle. But obviously it's not occupied. It could be that the trooper actually lives at this location. So that is all the footage for before the fact. And we know, so we've got them driving around in the 5:30 to 6 a.m. range. Let's start with here. This is where the drop-off is. And that happens at 6:03. The person on foot is dropped off at Palace Park Drive and Watermill Drive. From there, they walk directly south. We can see this is the house over here. So they are walking down towards this kind of community center. There's a pool, there's tennis courts, there's a playground. That's all part of this down here. Now, the thing that's interesting to me, that other cul-de-sac that I mentioned, I believe it's this one up here. Now, I can't really identify where some of those, there's another one over here. I can't identify where many of those cameras are, but why would the person be driving in here? That really doesn't have a whole lot to do with what's going to happen down over here. So again, I have to think that they're driving around the area, trying to make sure that they're not going to run into any trouble, that there's no law enforcement that happens to be in this area at this time. So drop off at 6:03. The next point is the person on foot at 6:04. And there's some footage of that also, which we're going to watch here in a moment. And then we know the 6 minutes occurs in the house here, and that is from 6:05 to 6:11, the person is in the home. And then we have them picked up down here. So they kind of go back out the way that they came in. They're picked up at 6:14 a.m. From here, the car goes straight towards Cypress Rose Hill Road. So it's going directly east. From there, it makes a right turn, heads directly south. And that runs down towards, a bunch of other roads that they could potentially have turned off of, but also the Northwest Freeway, 290 is right down here. So it's possible that's where they're headed. All the footage that has been released publicly is primarily from this area, but knowing that they had the direction pegged so strongly, and we've got some businesses and stuff here, I think that law enforcement might have other traces of this. There's even a Walmart down here. I'd be very surprised if law enforcement doesn't have a little bit more of this route, but that is what they've released so far. So let's go ahead and watch some of the surveillance footage of the person on foot. They described him as wearing a dark hoodie. In some of this footage, it looks like it's a light colored hoodie. but I'm not sure if that's because of the cameras using night vision. Even here where the light is kind of lighting him up, I don't know. To me, it looks like it might be like a light gray, but it's hard to tell. One thing you can kind of tell from this shot, though, is the person, and they've described them as potentially having a medium, I think even in some they've said muscular build. And here you can kind of make out the width of the back of his shoulders. I'm assuming that it's a male. Law enforcement has been pretty clear that they're looking for a male. So that footage was pretty much leading up to the occurrence. We then have this footage, which is after, and pretty much the person leaving the house. You can just see them running across the top of the screen there. This is, of course, footage from the community center. They're moving very quickly, although it doesn't look to me like they're running necessarily. I think this footage might be sped up. Unfortunately, there's no time indicator on it. I think they're walking fast, but I don't believe they're running. Same thing for this. I feel like this footage is sped up. Now look at this. That car pulls up to the corner exactly when that person is showing up at the corner. The car shuts off its lights. Someone drives by, but you can see that the rear lights are still on. The person's foot was still on the brakes. They get in the car, they pop on the lights, and they take off. What I'm curious about in terms of the timing of that car showing up is, was someone using, first of all, maybe the person in the house sent a quick text message that said now, or just some kind of indicator for meet me at the pickup spot, because the timing of that person walking over and that car showing up, it looked like it was a coordinated effort. I don't know if they've done anything in terms of geofencing or trying to see cell phone activity that might have happened. Man, wouldn't it be great if the person actually left their Wi-Fi on and it tried to connect to the home's network and there was some information around that or something. But it seems to me like there's some form of communication that happens either in the house or is right as the person's leaving the house, because they triggered that driver to show back up to that spot. It's also strange that means there's probably a bunch more footage of that driver just driving around the neighborhood. And why didn't the driver just go drive to that spot and shut off their lights, get their foot off the brake, and then sit there? There's a lot of activity and motion around this that I'm just having some difficulty understanding. Now, Sheriff Gonzalez says that it's clear that the killings were premeditated. Quote, canvassing, burning location, shooting them in cold blood like that is very concerning, the sheriff said. A source close to the investigation said investigators have developed a good lead on the vehicle and its possible location. Gonzalez urged the getaway driver to turn in the killer. You could either be potentially a witness to this, or you're going to be a defendant facing a capital murder charge, he said. So we are clear. You saw the footage. There's two people that are involved here, at least. There could be more people in the car, but there's at least a driver and there's a person that went into the house. Investigators are working with the FBI, which uses state-of-the-art technology at their lab in Quantico. They're hoping that a $25,000 reward will help lead to the killer. Nobody should be allowed to take a child from a mother or to take a son from a father. That comes from Cameron's mother, Taylor. She said, I don't think that there is any pain that feels the way this does. And if this person can kill 3 people, they can kill your child. They can kill somebody else's child. And she's definitely right about that. Especially someone that would do that in 6 minutes. Just the brutality of that act in that time frame. It's beyond me. $25,000 reward offered. The Harris County Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with the FBI Houston and Crime Stoppers of Houston, announces a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the identification and arrest of those responsible for the tragic murder and arson that claimed 3 lives in Cypress, Texas. This was a senseless and devastating act of violence that has shattered a family and left our community reeling, said Sheriff Gonzalez. We're committed to bringing those responsible to justice and providing some measure of closure to the victims' loved ones. Investigators have released new surveillance footage depicting the suspect in hopes someone will come forward with information. The video shows a male suspect with a tall, muscular build getting into a black 4-door sedan driven by someone else, Again, just a quick note, could be dark blue as well. We believe someone in our community may recognize this individual or the vehicle, said Sheriff Gonzalez. We urge anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to come forward. And that's what we're looking for, someone to come forward and help with this case, help bring justice to Kelly, to Kolin, and to Cameryn. On one of the street views, I walked forward towards the house and the sight changed to this, the remains of what's left, the terrible tragedy that happened in that house over 6 months ago. The FBI has released a flyer on this as well, basically just pushing the same information. The Harris County Sheriff's Office in Texas and the FBI's Houston Field Office are asking for the public's help in identifying the unknown individuals responsible for the homicide of 3 victims. We see they've got a couple of the still shots from the footage that we looked at here. And their explanation or description here, the surveillance video captured the suspect vehicle, which appeared to be dark in color, blue or black, 4-door sedan, with the third brake light located in the lower portion of the rear window. The vehicle was last seen at approximately 6:15 p.m., traveling eastbound on Cypress Wood Drive before it made a right turn to continue south on Cypress Rose Hill towards 290. And I just wanted to give Cameryn's mother a chance to have her words heard by her instead of just me reading them. So I want to share this with all of you guys.
3 lives were taken for no reason. My 4'6", 82-pound daughter was shot to death for no reason. Her boyfriend was shot to death and his mother was shot to death. And there is somebody evil out there walking around. And they will do it to somebody else. And they will harm somebody else's family. They will destroy somebody else's family. And if you know anything, if you have heard anything, somebody even mentioned something to you, whether you know it to be true or not, please call. Call the tip line, call the FBI, call Harris County detectives. Nobody should be allowed to take a child from a mother or to take a son from a father and a mother or to take somebody's mother. That's just, it's horrible. And evil cannot go long. God is too good, and it will come to pass, and this person will be caught eventually. But we need everybody to call in, and if they know anything, to say something, because somebody else is going to die if this person is not taken off the street. So thank you.
If you have any information on the murders of Kelly Masciarelli, Kolin Foster, or Cameryn Richard, please call the FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-225-5324. You can also go to tips.FBI.gov. If you need to remain anonymous for any reason, you can also call Crime Stoppers. You can reach them at 713-222-TIPS. That's 713-222-8477. And I hope someone out there does the right thing and helps push this case forward. There's a great team of law enforcement. They need one other team member, and it might be you. So please pick up that phone and help move this case. Thank you to everyone that supports us here on Brain Scratch. We can't do these presentations with the limited commercials in the way that we do without our amazing supporters. If you'd like to become one of them, please visit lordenarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or just buy us a coffee. We believe in this approach. We have for the past 10 years because we want you to be able to stay focused on the video. We want to have every best chance at helping these cases. So a big thank you to everyone that helps us do that. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week with another mystery here on the Lorden Arts channel.